This video is intended for viewing on or after 2027, and the aim is to establish an indisputable record that at least a few people were more aware of certain truths than the majority. Inevitably, it contains information which some people may find distressing, and no responsibility can be taken for offending anyone viewing, particularly prior to 2027. If you're easily distressed, please cease viewing now. Back around 2010, people were generally unaware the world's affairs were controlled by organised crime syndicates, or at least it was not regarded as a major threat. Some even genuinely thought top politicians were honest and worked to help the masses, and they ignored the revelations about them being members of secret societies like the Skull and Bones and so on. Gradually, up until 2027, it became clear even to the lesser intelligent that starvation, poverty and wars were part of the means of ensuring the rich became much richer and the poor became much poorer, and it dawned on the masses they were really just getting pocket money. That is, income between £20,000 and £200,000 per annum. They accepted a comfortable home, a nice car, a few foreign holidays as being successful. They were, of course, merely assisting in supplying extreme luxury lifestyles for the top 3%. Strangely, they never ceased to be amazed when discovering that bank officials were corrupt, politicians were being controlled, and, as for millennia, the masses were being manipulated by religion, particularly amongst the poorest and the least intelligent. They also failed to comprehend that organised crime was one of the most serious entities and could not accept that the law has always served a dual purpose. Many were surprised that referendums with a binary choice always ended identically to 3,619,915 coin tosses, and that it would always be thus, despite the resolute conviction that many individuals held they knew what was best, whether for or against. Of course, if the vote was taken any number of times, the percentage result would always be the same, except that the fors would sometimes have the slight advantage, and then at the others, the against would have the slight advantage. But the passion and conviction with which each opposing opinion was held during the Scottish independence referendum in 2014 was quite fascinating, but of course never the reasons for the actual result. It simply perpetuated the myth that permitting the masses to exercise a democratic right was always a good thing. There's never been any point in seeking the opinion of someone who formed that opinion without any real knowledge, but there will always be those who argue they knew best for whatever reason. Without trivializing the issue, it's essentially no different from the opinions formed by a football supporter who is absolutely certain in his mind he knows exactly why a specific team won or lost, and argues endlessly with an associate who holds the diametrically opposed view with equal conviction. No different. In 2015, there were at least 19 major religions, but in excess of 4,200 different religions is closer to the number actually operating. Right. It must be stressed here that I personally have always upheld anyone's right to believe in anything they choose, whether gods, fairies, ghosts, an afterlife, anything they choose, no matter how stupid. Anyone, everyone, should have that right, even when their belief has little or no foundation, and even when their beliefs have been totally disproved. Okay. If someone's convinced that 2 plus 2 is 5, they should be permitted that belief. But education surely is the important message. Until those who possess foolish beliefs just accept the possibility they might be wrong and permit their children to be educated otherwise, little can be done. This ignorance will be perpetuated. Few citizens appear to appreciate the link between the degrees of control a specific religion or group exerted upon its victims and the extreme actions of some individuals within these groups to demonstrate their allegiance. Nonetheless, the facts were plain to the intelligentsia Nowadays, it may appear laughable, but back then, the vast majority of people did not grasp that the more ridiculous the rules within a religion or group, and the more silly and the more repetitive the necessary actions were, the easier it was to brainwash the victims. They're already brainwashed. The unfortunate souls committing atrocities supposedly in the name of their religion were patently, obviously, simply mentally unwell and totally unaware of the brainwashing to which they'd been subjected. And this was, and unfortunately remains, the reason terrorists can never possibly be eradicated, since there will always be mentally unwell people. Whilst religion instigated the majority of the problems, if it didn't exist, mentally unwell would still find justification to commit atrocities. Think about it. It should be mentioned not only the religious were affected, although of course the evil of religion is the main contributory factor. Football hooligans and groups like Mods and Rockers and political extremists and racial extremists, for example, seeking to cause trouble, all share the same problem, mentally unwell, whether temporarily or not. Think of it for a moment. It was not generally proclaimed that anyone who saw fit to kill or mutilate another human being for no real reason simply had to be mentally unwell. Television reports of the day made all sorts of excuses instead of stating that glaringly obvious, simple, single fact. Around 2014, in order to create a record of what could be substantiated beyond all doubt, I conducted an experiment by instigating a government e-petition which purported to offer a solution to the problem of the thieves involved in the multi-million-pound corn business pretending to receive messages from the dead. An astounding number of people genuinely believed in this nonsense. Millions of them. I expect even now in 2027 and beyond, many unfortunate people will still believe. And please note, as clearly stated earlier, I believe they must be permitted to believe this nonsense if they choose. The experiment was simple: to expose those making vast profits and abusing vulnerable and the feeble-minded. Here, the viewer, particularly the younger viewer, is encouraged to research the people actually perpetrating these acts. You will be astounded to witness the most popular performers were amongst the worst actors ever to be encountered. Simply, laughingly appalling. You will not believe that the likes of Akora, Geller, Morgan, and most of the other con artists could ever be taken seriously by any sane person. The fact remains, many believed their preposterous claims these evil and or mentally unwell people gave out. It is hopefully going to ensure that the next generation are not so gullible. Suffice to say, the e-petition was seen by a fair number of people. Only a few hundred were sensible enough to sign. A shocking indictment and, of course, a warning to all. It was, of course, never going to succeed. It conducted the experiment simply to establish and record indisputable facts so that future generations might comprehend the thought processes, or lack of them, by their forebears. Allied videos which I posted were also designed to provoke comment from believers, and this can be verified. Hopefully, education will prevail. Man being, as man always has been, probably about now that there will be yet another war to end all wars in order to increase the wealth of the top 3% even more. This has been my contribution to expose the stupidity of man. If you genuinely think this does not affect you, and you are certainly not mentally unwell, just check this. Really. Do you belong to a group that makes you feel obliged to follow unaccountably silly rules? Do you habitually make specific signs or wear strange clothes or haircuts, or mutilate yourself or others, or do you sing or chant to some make-believe being? Yeah, think about it. Any individual who is mentally unwell and assassinates a member of royalty or a high-ranking politician or a pop star is as mentally unwell as the individual who tortures and kills under the illusion through indoctrination it's a good thing to do so. Simplistic quotes like "man will never learn" are unfortunately, I fear, apparently all too true. It's astounding how the same mistakes are endlessly made instead of using prior intelligence to correct. People are entertained by magicians, and very few believe the illusions they observe are real. However, when a performer actually claims that their tricks are true, like psychics, tarot readers, astrologers, and other con artists, a huge number of people actually think that, well, there might be something in it. Without any real reason, they appear to have a need to believe the unbelievable. We must discover why man appears to need the comfort that he will have conscious thought, after conscious thought, of course, ceases when he dies. Until a man accepts the truth that the mythical beings revered by countless millions are just that, mythical, how can he live in any reality? I endured more than half a century of abuse because of my knowledge, from frightened people trying to justify why they believed in a non-existent character. I tried to help as many as I could, but brainwashing requires concerted efforts and time to eradicate, and in 50 years I only managed to achieve 2 conversions. How conceited is it to believe that your foundless belief is more acceptable than the other 4,119 similarly foundless beliefs? Hopefully some common sense may prevail. Why was it considered acceptable in the 21st century to elect to unbelievable power individuals who openly admitted to believing in mythical beings? Some jokes are just not funny. By the way, please feel free to add your comment or your opinion below. I'm never offended. And if you want to be really original and state you're the one who's mentally unwell, that, of course, never fails to amuse. And it may, of course, also be the case. Some jokes are just not funny.